Down the Dark Lane, 3 Thrillers from the Motel, by Ned DeHaan. The audiobook, made available on BlackBoxOnlineRadio. Please like and subscribe, and consider supporting this channel at BuyMeACoffee.com, BuyMeACoffee.com/BlackBoxNed88. The Barry Albert Tapes, Chapter 1, The Jonestown Motel. An unexpected knock tapped at the door. Barry Albert looked up from his resting position on the motel bed. It was now 9:30 in the morning, and he was not on duty, so he wondered what could have happened. Who could it have been? No one ever knocked at this time, so he stayed motionless for a second. Then the knock sounded again, only this time in a triple tap. Barry pulled his disheveled body out of bed, and his blue sweatpants and white tank top were almost stuck to his skin. He opened the door, and to his surprise, there stood someone an inch shorter than him. He was a rather pale-skinned young male. He was wearing all green and black, but the first thing that caught Barry's eye was that his hair matched his clothes. The man was pale indeed, but his hair was also streaked with a shade of green that bordered on neon. The same green color was on the design on his t-shirt, and even on his belt, which held up his black slacked pants. Around his shoulders was a black blazer jacket, almost like a suit coat. "Are you Barry Albert?" the young man said with a smile. "Yeah, what's going on?" Barry asked back. "If you want your room cleaned, that does it." "No, sir," he interrupted. "I just want to talk. It is about Emmanuel Inman." Barry was tempted to slam the door in the poor man's face. Emmanuel Inman, Manny Inman, the man in man. It had been 5 long years since Barry had seen Emmanuel Inman face to face. He knew he was a criminal, but Manny Inman had been convicted for a series of homicides that were known as the White Horse Killings. Barry knew with certainty that Manny wasn't the only perpetrator. It had always stayed in Barry's mind that he could have been an accomplice, an active participant even, but Barry Albert was a witness to Manny's innocence in the whole thing. So much had changed since Barry had been involved with the White Horse Killer saga. He had moved on from one motel to the next. He no longer lived in the Birch Bark Motel and worked as an evening watchman at a warehouse. Barry now lived in Jonestown, Pennsylvania, and served as the facilities manager for the Jonestown Motel. It had a different name when Barry was last there, of course. He had spent several days in the motel, back in the days of the White Horse spree. So much had gone down, and Barry was playing house with his little stick of TNT herself, Joanna Skite. It had been 5 years as well since Barry had even seen Joanna. She was beautiful in his mind, but Barry felt conflicted as she had walked out on him, leaving only a goodbye note. The odd part was that Joanna Skite had never been seen again. Barry had worked for several more months as the evening watchman, almost a year really. Then he decided to move on to a place that had given him some better times. Jonestown. He didn't do much in Jonestown, but he wasn't doing much in Williamsport, Maryland either. The move had been designed to create a change of scenery. "So what do you need exactly?" Barry asked. "My name is Martin Gill," the green-haired man replied. Barry looked him over again and just realized how young Martin was. "Martin?" Barry pondered out loud. "How old are you exactly?" "I'm 18. Look, I don't know what you want from me," Barry continued, "but it's a sunny day in the month of April. Shouldn't you be like at college on some, or maybe over on like a spring break thing? I mean, I don't know, like at the beach, maybe, something like that?" "I'm not in college, Mr. Albert," Martin clarified. "Well, that's for the best," Barry muttered. "I majored in French, and now I am the Sultan of the Jonestown Motel." "You own the place?" Martin asked. "No, I'm the facilities manager," Barry retorted. But the man at the front desk said that you were in charge of the housekeeping," Martin went on. "I am the facilities manager," Barry said in a harsh way. "Okay, sure, Mr. Albert. Just call me Barry," he instructed. "Right, Barry," Martin relaxed. I am a writer. A true crime writer. About 6 months ago, I launched a website, truecrimegovernment.com. It isn't perfect, and it isn't generating a lot of revenue, but the ship has sailed. I have put together some of the best commentary on true crime cases, the ones that people see on TV. I was the first person to write full commentaries on the police reports of the headless chain hunter Emil Osment, and even about the files of Daryl Snodgrass, the Desert Reaper of Nevada. Snodgrass? Barry repeated. That was his name? Yeah, Martin elaborated. He was a serial killer out west. He murdered at least 5 women, and he was found dead inside a place called the Miner's Edge Motel, in the middle of nowhere, more or less. No one knows how things went down, but the autopsy was clear that he was poisoned. The official verdict is that he committed suicide, but I don't believe that. I believe he was deliberately poisoned by someone. Well, I don't know anything about this Daryl Snodgrass, Barry admitted. But you do know about Emmanuel Inman, Martin challenged him. You were held up at gunpoint by him. You also saw the White Horse Killer commit his final crime, the murder of Rick Carter. Please, Mr. Barry, I just want to talk for a few minutes. That's all I'm asking for. Just a few minutes of your time. No one else outside of law enforcement has interviewed you. There are all these books that are popping up about the White Horse Killer, but how can they tell the story if they haven't talked to one of the surviving witnesses? Are you writing a book? Barry asked Martin directly. Not yet, Martin squeamishly answered. Maybe one day, but right now, I'm just asking about the White Horse Killer for my website. Okay, come on in, Barry offered. So, Martin, was it? Do you like Starbucks cold brew coffee? I've never had it, but I wouldn't mind trying, Martin agreed. You said you're 18? Barry doubled back. Yes, sir, said Martin. Martin moved to the only chair in the room, a gray suede chair. Barry brought Martin a styrofoam cup, the one with the ridges on it, and he handed him the coffee. They both drank. Martin smirked for a second. It's good that you started early, Martin, said Barry. Like launching your website and all. It's been 5 years since that mess, and I haven't done a damn thing. My best friend Warren Jones, he's now married and he has 2 kids. I'm still here, moping around in the backwoods of Pennsylvania. Martin reached into his pocket and removed a small silver device. Do you mind if I record this? Martin asked for permission. Go for it, Barry allowed. But Martin, I don't know what I can do for you. Martin huffed and puffed for a second. What can you do? He inquired back. All I want is your story. Barry moved to a different seated position on the motel bed. Okay, let's go, he said. Beginning of recording 1. Martin, please state your name and tell us a little bit about yourself. My name is Bernard Albert. I go by Barry. I'm 34 years old, and I live in Pennsylvania. I like drinking coffee. That's about it, really. What is your connection to the White Horse Killer mystery? Mystery? I didn't think this was a mystery. It's not still a mystery. The White Horse Killer has been convicted. His name is Manny Inman, right? He's rotting in a jail cell in some part of Virginia now. I've seen him on the TV a few times when he is running his mouth. He likes to talk in circles, and some people think that he is smart. I'm not sure why. If they're always guessing at the meaning of his words, there is a chance that he is full of shit. No, trust me. Manny Inman is full of shit. Well, let's say that the police are wrong. What if they have convicted an innocent man? Oh, wait a second, Martin. Who said anything about innocent? What do you mean? Just because someone isn't guilty of the whole thing, that doesn't mean that they're innocent. Manny Inman was, and is, a twisted goofball criminal. He isn't just some type of weird person. He is violent. He even pulled a gun on me once. Things are better with him behind bars. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's start from the beginning. You were a witness to multiple events in the White Horse Killer saga. You have been face to face with the man convicted for the crimes, but you were also a witness to the final White Horse crime, the murder of Rick Carter. Is there a particular one you'd be more comfortable discussing first? Yes, no, maybe so. Look, No one has asked me about this stuff in a long time. I don't even care anymore. I'm the facilities manager at a respected establishment. I focus my time and energy on those duties. Well, let's say that I care. I want to hear the truth. I am truly shocked that no one has reached out to you before. You didn't even testify at the trial of Emmanuel Inman. Well, what should I have said? They convicted him anyway. Is Manny Inman a sociopath? I don't know, I'm not a medical doctor. In your unprofessional opinion, is Manny Inman a sociopath? Yeah, sociopath, psychopath, something like that. He's indifferent to human life. I have seen him on the television. He loves being in prison. He doesn't care what kind of walls are around him as long as he gets to talk in circles. But more importantly, you were a witness to the final crime of the White Horse Killer, the murder of Rick Carter. After that, Manny Inman was arrested, and the crime stopped. Doesn't that suggest that Manny Inman was the White Horse Killer the whole time? That's not what Rick Carter said. Yes, not only did you see Rick Carter die, you knew him too. Absolutely not. No, I didn't know him. I talked to him one time. I was sitting in a Burger King. No, it was a Burger World. I had just eaten a triple cheeseburger, and Rick Carter came over and asked if he could sit down at the table in my booth. He even stole some of my French fries, but that is beside the point. I didn't know the guy. I had never met him before that. Everything I told the police was true. But you just said Rick Carter said something to you about Manny Inman. Yeah, he did. What did he say? He said that Manny Inman couldn't have been the White Horse Killer. Okay, well, no, he didn't exactly say it like that, but from what he said, Manny Inman couldn't have been the White Horse Killer. And why not? Rick Carter confessed to me that he was the person using the name, the White Horse Killer. Using the name? What do you mean? He confessed to the crimes. But you never told this to the police. Why not? 5 minutes after confessing to the crimes, Rick Carter was supposedly murdered by the White Horse Killer. How would they have understood? How could anyone understand? Yeah, I'm having some trouble. I don't get it. Rick Carter told you that he committed the White Horse crimes before his own death? He did. He did say that. What did he say about the letters and those crypto codes? He said he wrote them too. Do you know the solutions? I do not. I don't. No, he said, no one would ever figure them out. Moreover, he said you would need like a PhD or some graduate degree in mathematics to figure them out. I don't know. You mean you're telling me, and I just want to make sure that I understand this. Rick Carter was the White Horse Killer? He killed innocent people then? Whoa, wait, Martin. I didn't say that. Oh no, I didn't say that. Yeah, Barry, you kinda did. No, I did not. I said Rick Carter confessed to me that he was the White Horse Killer, but sometimes people don't always tell the truth. I don't understand at all. Neither do I, Martin. The good news is we don't have to understand. Sometimes, perhaps there are murder mysteries that will not be solved. Well, I don't accept that. I don't give up that easily. I know my stuff. Yeah? Yes, I do, Barry Albert. I know my stuff. I also don't give up. I want the truth. But what's it all for, Martin? What exactly are you going to do with the truth? I know. You don't know everything. No, that's not what I was going to say. But doesn't it bother you? Perhaps you know more about the workings of Rick Carter and Manny Inman than anyone else who is currently alive. But you don't know everything. Then why'd you come knocking on my door? Well, isn't it obvious, Barry? I wanted to learn the true story of Manny Inman and the death of Rick Carter. Well, the truth is going to disappoint you. Oh? And why is that? Nah, I take it back. I'm sorry for getting so heated with everything. I think about it sometimes, but I don't know everything. I can only tell you what I think happened. I'm listening with open ears, Barry. Rick Carter confessed to me that he was the White Horse Killer. He said he planned the whole thing. He had known Emmanuel Inman for years. I forget his exact wording, but he said that he had been toying with the idea of being a serial killer for a little while. He said that, he wanted to commit a brilliant crime and get away with it, but to do that he would need a fall guy. His plan was to commit a series of murders and blame it on Manny Inman. It sounds like Rick Carter was a criminal genius. 5 minutes later he was shot and killed. Oh, yeah, but Martin, I don't know everything. I can't go back and ask Rick Carter the truth. I mean, this is just my take on the subject, but I think it was all a lie. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but I think that all the information I know and have to offer you is a lie. It was all bad information, made up by Rick Carter. Maybe not everything. Such as? Well, you are more than a witness to the murder of Rick Carter. You were also a witness to the criminal activities of Manny Inman, the true crimes. But, Barry, if that story, why would Rick Carter lie about the White Horse murders? Why would he call himself the White Horse Killer if he didn't do it? Why would someone say that if it weren't true? People lie all the time, Martin. But why? I've thought about it a lot. I think Rick Carter was confessing to something that he didn't do. I think he was just playing mind games. He thought he was like a master manipulator, a master persuader, or something like that. And he would have been, but he got murdered. His plan was foiled. You see, Martin, I think Rick Carter didn't want to be a serial killer. I have never once seen anything to suggest that he killed anyone. A murderer? No. But I think he was constructing an elaborate prank. A prank? Yes, a prank, like a cruel joke, a hoax. It was all a lie, Martin. In every fiber of my being, I do not think that Rick Carter was the White Horse Killer. I think that he was just trying to deceive people. If he created a twisted explanation on why he killed those people, but didn't actually kill anyone, he would never get caught. I'm not sure what he was going to do with it. Maybe he wanted to be in front of the cameras like the way Manny Hinman is now, interviewed, be a suspect, be the focus of people's theories, like the way they're discussing him now. But there was one big mistake Rick Carter made. And what was that? Well, he got killed, didn't he? Barry, who killed Rick Carter? I have no idea. I'm not even messing around. Someone in a black hooded costume. I think you do. I don't, Martin. That's all I saw. Someone dressed in all black from head to toe, like some type of black baggy costume. I couldn't make out a single feature. That person ran up and killed Rick Carter and dropped a piece of paper on the seat of his rental car. It had a W on it. That's all I know. I don't know who was in that costume. Martin paused the recorder. Martin Gill looked at Barry Albert with the most unpleasant stare in the world. Barry had seen something similar when he had watched the psychic and mystifier Uri Geller on TV when he was a kid. But this was not for entertainment. Barry knew that look. What's going on? Barry asked in an unconvincing way. We are not recording now, said Martin. I want to know the truth. I just told you everything, Barry replied. No, you didn't, Martin challenged him. This isn't being recorded. It's off the record. I just want to know. I believe you know when you say that someone in black killed Rick Carter. But who are they working for? For the first time in a long time, Barry was forced to remember something that he spent so long trying to forget. He knew who had killed Rick Carter, or perhaps a better way of putting it was, he knew the organization. They didn't have a specific name, but Barry Albert had watched an entire sect of them commit mass suicide. He remembered back to that day 5 years ago. Barry and his pals had called them the Satanic Network at the time, but that wasn't their official name. Their leader of that faction was named Trista Richards. She had orchestrated a murder-suicide plot, thinking that she had been the one who had found the White Horse Killer. Trista had been mistaken, and the foiled plot left her entire cult family dead. To this day their bodies rested in the forest of Pennsylvania outside of Jonestown, where Barry worked. He never said the words aloud, but he wanted to live in Jonestown, Pennsylvania, so he could be close to the dark secret. If anyone were to discover it, he would be the first to know. The Satanic Network was so much more than just a single-sector faction. Barry had watched several of its members die, but it was a nationwide movement. There was no way to know how many people were a part of it, or how many people shared the belief system. Something, with such open membership and lack of boundaries, was hard to document. However, according to Rick Carter, he had stolen the W symbol from the Satanic Network. It looked like two interlocking V's on top of each other that formed into a W. This gave Barry some room for thinking that Rick Carter was indeed behind some of the White Horse murders. But if that were the case, why did Manny Inman deny all knowledge of him? Nobody knew who Rick Carter was. In Barry's mind, he was a sneaky observer who wanted to insert himself into the story. But unlike most people in America, Rick Carter had known about the functions of the Satanic Network. Now what was Barry Albert to do with Martin Gill? The young writer before him wanted to know the truth. Barry held on to the truth for so long. Of course, his best friend Warren Jones knew the story as well as Barry did, and some of Barry's former co-workers did too, but that was it. Barry hadn't spoken to another soul about this, and now he had the chance. Like I said, Barry started, I told you everything I know. I don't believe you, Martin challenged him. That makes me wonder, Mr. Albert. Did you play a greater role with the White Horse killings? Barry wanted to laugh, but not in a funny way. However, he controlled himself. And what role would that be, Martin? He asked. To be honest, Barry, Martin continued, I haven't the faintest idea. I just think that it's an overwhelming coincidence that you witnessed a White Horse killer victim die with your own eyes, and you are also held up by Manny Inman, the man convicted for the crimes. You are everywhere, but for some reason no one has put it together. Barry's lips formed into a flat smile. Well, maybe that has something to do with Joanna, Barry muttered. You mean Joanna Skite? Martin asked. Yes, he did mean Joanna Skite. It had been 5 long years since Barry had seen Joanna, or Jo as he sometimes called her. She was in his motel room at the Birch Park back in Williamsport, Maryland. She said she was going to use the bathroom, but she hopped out the window and went to see another man, Robert Gallus. The last time Joanna was seen by anyone was when she met with Robert Gallus, or Golly as they called him. Gallus had been let out of prison after Manny Inman had been arrested for the White Horse murders, and he was even seen walking with Joanna Skite. Neither of them had ever been found again. Barry had no idea if Golly or Joanna were still alive at all. Joanna Skite was Manny Inman's ex-girlfriend, Martin professed. That's not, no she wasn't, Barry corrected him. She was mine. You used to date Joanna Skite, Martin laughed. Why is that funny? Barry raised his voice. It's... Martin stammered. It's not. Really? What do you mean, really? Barry asked back. You were Joanna Skite's ex-boyfriend? Martin kept asking. I wouldn't think of it like that, Barry elaborated. I'm guessing you know all about Robert Gallus and Trista Richards. Manny, Trista, Golly, and Jo were together. They were drifters. They bounced around the country. One day they ended up in Williamsport, Maryland. I was working at a warehouse. I was one of those watchmen, like security. They came onto the grounds and I ran into them. Or they ran into me, is a better way of putting it. I saw Joanna later on in town and... Yeah, Martin almost frowned. I've seen photos of her, Martin chuckled. She was hot. I suppose, Barry agreed without emotion. I didn't know her that well. I knew her for like a week and a half. One day she ran off to meet Golly Gallus when he was released from jail, and I never saw her again. Martin's eyes lowered. Barry could sense that he was starting to believe him now. That was good news for Barry, as he had no desire to talk about the mass suicide that had been orchestrated by the Satanic Network. So, do you know if Joanna is still alive or not? Martin asked him. I have no idea, Barry answered truthfully. I can say that I have not had any contact with her since she walked out. What was she like? Martin asked. Actually, maybe it is better if we turn the recorder on for this one. All right, Barry concurred. The Barry Albert tapes, take 2. Now, you, Barry Albert, were not only a witness to the murder of Rick Carter, You had a close, intimate familiarity with members of Manny Inman's inner circle. I guess you could say that. For the record, is it true that you were an ex-lover of Manny Inman's associate Joanna Skite? Ex-lover? Lover? Love is a strong word. But you said that you were seeing her. Again, I'm not liking this kind of phrasing. Okay, so how would you describe your relationship with Joanna? She was confused, maybe even a little bit broken. She was practically a runaway. I mean, she was an adult, and she could do what she wanted. But she didn't know what to do. She met up with two drifters, one of which was Manny Inman. Yeah, I knew Joanna. Love? No, that wasn't love. She was just running. She stayed with me for a little. I don't even remember how many days. Maybe 8 or 9, or was it 5? I don't remember. Did she think that Manny Inman was the White Horse Killer? I wish you hadn't asked that. Why not? At first, Joanna thought Manny was the White Horse Killer. She also thought that his, other friend, Trista Richards, was involved with it as well. Then she learned the truth, and I don't want to say any more. How can you just leave it at that? Fine. Manny Inman could not have been the White Horse Killer. He could not have been responsible for all of the murders, at least. He was with me when 2 of them happened. I mean, like date and time. I think I still have the receipts somewhere. Let's just say he could have done something illegal, but this whole theory that the prosecutors and the detectives concocted about how a single lone nut committed all of these crimes and his name was Emmanuel Inman, it is impossible. So you have evidence in your possession that could exonerate Emmanuel Inman? No, not at all. I have a receipt from a coffee shop and a Chinese restaurant, and all I have is my word that Emmanuel Inman was in the same area as I was at the time. Why didn't you say anything before? As I said, I don't know what happened. Maybe Manny did something. I mean, he pulled a gun on me once. Is it possible that he killed someone and the jury of his peers found him guilty? So, that's where I left it. I don't give a damn about him, guilty or not. He's in prison. He's a terrible person. I am glad he is rotting in that jail, and that's it. But what do you think about another killer being on the loose? In that respect, perhaps I was wrong. But as I said, I don't have any evidence. Well, let's shift gears for a little. Did Joanna Skite ever talk to you about Manny Inman? Did she? Oh, yes, she did. Joanna thought Manny Inman was a genius. She said he was smart. He talked in this weird kind of sing-song way, but she said there was a deeper meaning in everything that he was saying. She had also said that he had a production company called Inman Productions, but I don't know what that was. I've even searched for it on Google, and I've found nothing. I have no idea what she was talking about. But until he pulled a gun on us and threatened to kill us, she thought so highly of Manny. Were Joanna and Manny Inman lovers? Yes. Were Joanna and his other associate, Robert Gallus, lovers? Also yes. I think you can gather how their relationship functioned. They were drifters and they slept around. Do you ever miss Joanna Skite? No. No, I don't miss her. I know this is going to sound weird, but I read this thing on Facebook once. I think it was a meme, or maybe it was, like, just written out in a different way. And it said, "Did I ever love you, or did I love the romanticization of you that I created in my mind?" I didn't even know Joanna. I just made up an image of her on my own that I wanted to be true. This is a recording, but over to my left is a door. What would you say if Joanna Skite were to walk through that door right now? I'd say, "Banana rice isn't that good. You should try it with mangoes." I'm sorry, I don't understand. You asked what I would say to her? That's it. Nothing about the White Horse Killer or Manny Inman? No, I have nothing to say about them. I never cared about Manny Inman to begin with. I still don't care about him. As far as this whole White Horse Killer mystery, I'm going to let the authorities who are responsible handle it. I have nothing left to say, and frankly, I don't understand the obsession with it at all. Some twisted and demented man or group of people committed a string of homicides. They were mentally ill, and that is the end of it. And to be honest with you, Martin, the only reason people even talk about the White Horse Killer is because he left the letter W behind at the crime scenes. Oh, dear Lord, the letter W. It is so utterly perplexing. Who cares? It's just a bunch of gobbledygook. People are projecting their own stories onto it, and that's all. That's all it is. The same thing goes for those like little ciphers or crypto puzzles, whatever people want to call them. That's it. It's the same stuff. You mean the cryptograms? Whatever, they're just toys and teases. They are distractions. The person or people responsible for committing the murders made those to distract the world from how evil, sick, and pathetic and weak they actually were. People are going to be obsessing over that crap for a lifetime. Lifetime after lifetime. It's just a giant waste of time, in my opinion. I disagree. Oh, yeah? You do now, huh? Well, Mr. Martin Gill, age 18 years old, I'm sure you have enough life experience to think for yourself, and you are a legal adult, so I will try my best to respect your opinion, even if I don't give a flying fuck. How's that? What if someone could solve the mystery? Yeah, and if they do, more power to them. If some dude is sitting around at home and can figure out this thing and connect the dots in a way that the police could not, bring it on. I mean that sincerely. Maybe you're talking to that man right now. Well, Martin, don't just sit there. Put some sugar on it. Tell me how. Show me everything you got. I want to know who the White Horse Killer was. About 5 seconds ago, you said you didn't care. All right, fine. Keep it to yourself. Look, I tried my best to answer all of your questions, but to be honest, I'm just a 34-year-old man who's the facilities manager of a small motel in the middle of nowhere, and that's it. I should work on getting my life together, as opposed to obsessing over a twisted murder mystery that is better left to the actual detectives. Martin turned off the recording. Martin looked at Barry with a sunken face, but it was not the look that Barry had expected. In fact, the more that Barry stared at Martin's silent face, he couldn't guess at what Martin was thinking. Well, Barry Albert, Martin began, I thank you for your time. As I said, I've read everything about the White Horse Killer and some other true crime cases, but it was always the White Horse that stood out to me. Well, I stand by everything that I said about the White Horse Killer, Barry defended. I think you were truthful with me, Martin admitted. I think you know more than what you said, but from the parts you did tell me, I think you were telling the truth. Okay. Where are you going with this, Martin? At this time? I'm sorry, but perhaps I have not been 100% truthful with you, Martin explained. I may need more than just a few minutes of your time. Barry looked around the motel room. He felt the chills running down his spine, all the way to his ankle joints. He remembered being ambushed by the Satanic Network in Jonestown. Was this another attack waiting to happen? What is it? Barry asked. Did the White Horse Killer ever abduct anyone? Martin asked. No, never, Barry retorted. He was quite surprised that Martin would ask that. In fact, Barry speculated that Martin probably knew the answer to the question very well, even before he asked it. Do you think the White Horse Killer is capable of abducting someone? Martin asked again. No idea. Come on, Martin, where are you going with this? Martin reached into the front pocket of his pants and removed a white piece of paper that had been folded into fourths. He slowly unfolded it, and Barry could see the striking blue ink from a felt-tip pen. Someone sent me this, Martin revealed. I thought it wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Just someone saw my name on the website and did some backtracking and tracing. They must have sent it as a prank, right? Right? I was undecided about the White Horse Killer. I mean, I didn't know what happened, but Barry, if what you say is true, Manny Inman wasn't the White Horse Killer. What do you think about this? Martin outstretched his hand with the paper in it toward Barry, and he took the crumpled letter. XA, XB, XC, WA, WB, WC, Joe by Joe by Joe. Where is Joanna? How does one walk up a sidewalk down? WO, 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 WO. Big X, 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 small x. Inman would drown in my mind. The nylon cord is on Joanna's wrist. FXNXD, BWRRY, AWBXRT. Does this mean anything to you? Barry didn't respond immediately. He felt the weight of terror and the heaviness of the past, fighting with each other. Only the parts that are written in English, said Barry. This is the real reason why I'm here, said Martin. I mean, all of that other stuff is true. I am a real writer. I have a website, but that's not why I contacted you. I wanted to know if that letter is authentic or not. The only part of the code that made sense to me was the one at the end. Find Barry Albert. Who did you show this to? Barry asked. Only you, Martin revealed. Barry now looked at Martin with a plan to make haste. The first lines use an ABC pattern, Barry noticed. Then there's a line of X's, and the line of X's has a lowercase x at the end. The line of W's and O's is actually W's and zeros, except for the last letter, which becomes a real O. The word drown is capitalized. The ABC part at the beginning and the endings doesn't follow the pattern. I think this means that the White Horse Killer is still out there, and he has Joanna. For the first time during the whole interview, Martin stood up and began to pace around the room. That is incredible, Martin gasped with excitement. I can't believe how you did that, but it did say to find you. We have to go. Where are we going? Martin asked. You were about to say something about the code. Maybe I'm wrong, but if I'm not, the White Horse Killer is holding her hostage, and she is in. To be continued.